Hi, I'm Mike Cadd. I'm a survey advisor in the Environment Agency, based in the geomatics team. We're a dispersed team. There's about 7 advisors around the country, and I'm responsible for the 2 areas in the northwest. I've been with the agency about 16 years, and the Environment Agency have been using Enforce for about 20 years, I've been reliably told. So I'm just going to run through what sort of survey data we use. I was hoping that Ollie Viner would be here to talk about river surveys, so I'll try and give a bit more detail on them. I'll touch on the EA channel section data format, and also just touch on alongside the EA survey spec and how to arrange the data for delivery to the Environment Agency. So these are the various sort of reasons for survey in the agency, various data that we collect. So for the flood risk, we primarily collect the LiDAR data, mainly for flood modelling studies. So we used to just fly the sort of catchments, the river catchments. I'll just show later on that we are looking to get nationwide coverage at 1 metre resolution by 2021. So that's something that we're working on at the moment. To do the flood modelling, the LiDAR doesn't give us enough resolution to tell us what's happening in the channels. So we go out or get contractors to go out and survey river cross sections. So the river sections we generally survey every 100 metres, plus structures such as weirs, bridges, any bottlenecks in the watercourses. The spacing can be variable. If it's a steep watercourse, then we will survey every maybe 50 metres. And depending on the watercourse, the modellers might even interpolate that data and add extra sections to make the model more stable. We're very reluctant to use the word dredging within the Environment Agency, but we do remove gravel and silt from watercourses if there's a risk of flooding. So in the past, we used to remove gravel, and it was because that's what our ops guys did. They could see the gravel shoal in the river, and they would take it out. Now it's more evidence-based. So the sort of hot spots that we've got, especially in the northwest, around like Cockermouth and places like that, we will survey those hot spots every year or so. We've got flood models of those areas so that we can sort of say, well, okay, we can let the gravel build up to a certain threshold. Once it reaches that threshold, we can send the guys in with the diggers and the trucks to take that gravel out and dredge down to a particular threshold, so we're not over dredging the river. We require a lot of topographic work for some of the schemes that we're doing. We're currently in a big project at the moment. 6-year kind of target that we've been asked to hit is to better protect 300,000 homes from flooding. So I think that's the deadline for that is 2021, and we've sort of hit the halfway mark for that. So the schemes, for example, Rochdale is a big flood alleviation scheme in Rochdale. So we've had topographic survey done for quite a stretch of the River Roch. We're looking at building flood basins upstream of the city, as well as sort of improving the defences through the town. So a heck of a lot of topo survey required in those sort of areas. We've also got our crest levels that goes into our asset database, so we can sort of see the standard of protection that we have for those defences. And I think after it was the 2012 floods, we had the Army going out inspecting the assets, but we had survey contractors going out as well to survey the crest levels to update our databases that we've got. Yeah, flood storage volumes is important, so we know how much water we can hold back. We have various assets that are inline structures, so we'll have gates in the river that can come up and so let the river weir over the top, slow the river down so that it protects the villages downstream, and then the upstream area is allowed to flood. Or we have offline defences where there's a gate maybe in the side of the riverbank that we can lower that and flood fields, again to protect the properties downstream. Those basins have got walls and embankments, and they need monitoring every year. It depends, some assets it's every 2 years, but usually it's an annual thing where we go out and monitor those assets. And then after a flood we'll go out and record the extents, so the depth of water that was in a particular town, and also the sort of extents that the flood water's reached. So we can map where the flood water went, and also to calibrate our flood models, because the models is just a computer simulation of where we think the water's going to go. If you throw so much water down a river channel, where's it going to go? After a flood, we gather the data just to calibrate and check our modelling and improve it if necessary. On the environment management side of the business, we do a lot of volume calculations. So we have regulated waste sites, so we might have a waste transfer station, and they can have so many tonnes of material on their site. In some cases they exceed what they're allowed, and it becomes a blight in the community, massive heaps of waste. So we go in and check those volumes to see whether they're within their permit. There's also illegal waste sites, so you might have a farmer that's decided to let waste be dumped in a corner of his field. We'll go and quantify that waste so that part of the prosecution process is that HMRC get involved as well. So there's the sort of proceeds of crime that gets sort of factored into their their sentencing. We're also encouraging the migration of fish further upstream in lots of watercourses. So we'll either be building a fish pass or we'll be removing the weirs completely, so that it allows the migration of fish up the watercourses. And then there's our river gauging stations for the flood warning system that we obviously we need the level data. That's has a local datum, which is the lowest bed level at that particular site, but it's also referenced to OS datum. More recently I've been involved with the geomorphology teams, because they're interested in the transport of gravel down at a watercourse, because that is an indication of the health of a river. If the gravel is it's kind of beyond me this, but if it's mobile and there's fresh gravels, then that encourages the spawning of fish. So this week I was up at St John's Beck in Cumbria, and we were looking at scanning the riverbanks and for possible erosion when they do managed release from Thirlmere Reservoir. So the LiDAR data, we've got 2 aircraft based out of East Midlands Airport, and yeah, up until a few years ago they've been just surveying the areas of interest in terms of the flood modelling programme. But more recently LiDAR data has been useful for some of the environmental sites that aren't necessarily near rivers, and also for perhaps some of the upland sites where we're looking at natural flood management schemes where we try and perhaps slow the water getting to the rivers. So it's in our interest now to map the whole of the country. We're going to do it to 1 metre resolution, which should hopefully be available by 2021. Well, flown by 2021. When that data is available, it might be 2022. But the plan then is to refly the country every 3 years. so that we've got some sort of change monitoring going on as well. So you can see the light green patches were what was surveyed last winter, and the blue patches are what's been surveyed this winter. So we only fly when there's no leaves on the trees, so it's usually from September, October, November, maybe through till about April. Those squares are 25 kilometres square, so we're gradually picking up the whole of the country. Just out of interest, does anyone recognise the stadium on the bottom left?
Wembley.
Yes, yeah. You can just where the steelwork is quite dense, you can see either side. You can just about make out the arch. But that's high resolution LiDAR. That's 25 centimetre resolution.
How much of this is available to general public?
Everything.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like I read it.
Yeah. So yeah, you're welcome to use our data. If you're, I don't know, doing a scan of a castle or whatever, and you stick it on top of our LiDAR data as a bit of a backdrop, by all means you're free to use it. Up until a few years ago, it was just our professional partners that could use the data. It's now publicly available through the open data license. So yeah, the web address is there at the top. Just click on the surveys, and that will come up with the user interface there for you to help yourselves. So there's the DTM and also the DSM. So the DSM is with all the buildings and the trees and vegetation, cars and stuff like that. The DTM is just the bare earth model that our flood modelers are interested in terms of flow of floodwaters. Also on that site there is you can download the catalogue, so it will tell you, I think it's the shapefile, so you can see what areas have been flown what particular years, and it's possible then to just download those years. So if you are looking at comparing data, the popular method is just to go for our we've got the 1 metre composite data there, which is the latest data, but it could be a mishmash of several years that we've feathered together. Yeah, hopefully by 2021 there'll be a seamless coverage for the whole country. If you do use our data, just give us a mention. There's the Twitter address there. Just give us a mention. We can't endorse your companies, but we can perhaps share your tweet if you've been using our LiDAR.
Just before we move on, what formats are available?
Right, good question. It's currently available as ASC, but I've had there's lots of talk about going towards GeoTIFF.
Not the raw as, because the raw as are classified, so you can actually pull away the trees, pull away the vegetation.
I'll find out about the LAS. I think you can get the point clouds.
What about imagery? Because is it doing colorized point clouds?
Yeah, with the old system you could get the images. With the new system I haven't tried yet. So I don't see why not. Although the LiDAR, we fly it at night time because there's less air traffic. So yeah, we don't have the camera switched on then. Yeah, we've also recorded bathymetry, so we've got there's probably about 30 or 40 of those arc boats around the country, which is sort of similar to that boat over there. But their primary use for the arc boat is for flow measurement. So without needing a control structure, we can drop those boats in the river, and they've got ADCPs, which is acoustic current Doppler profilers, and they can measure the current at various depths, the flow at various depths in the rivers. As a byproduct of that, it tracks the bed as well. So there's 5 sounding heads. So we can use the bathymetry for visualizations, because we're not happy with the compass that is within that sounder, it can be affected by metallic objects. So yeah, for bathymetry, using survey grade GPS like that one's got, we just use the centre beam, because if you're using the angled beams and your compass is off, you could be completely in the opposite direction. We've also got the survey vessel, the catamaran there, at Sentry 3, and that's goes around the country wherever we need need data. And then if we need anything bigger, then we've got for sort of the ECMAS, which is Estuarine and Coastal Monitoring team. They'll hire in something like the Mersey Gateway to do sort of near-shore monitoring. So the EA survey spec can be downloaded from that rather easy to follow web link at the bottom there. We generally try to keep it up to date with current trends, techniques, technology. So we will probably do a revision maybe every year or so. It depends what if there's anything that we feel needs modifying. So the 16 sections, it looks pretty scary when you first of all set hands on it and look through it. Really, sections 1 and 2 are for all surveys, just general survey requirements. Section 2 is for control. So we've got benchmarks around the country. I think I've got about 3,000 in the northwest. So yeah, section 2 specifies how to install that control, and we've got 6 different grades of control, ranging from the E1s, which in the spec is a tidal cycle of observations, and then it's processed using Bernese software, down to the E6s, which is totally independent using network RTK. And then the remaining sections then is depending on what job you're working on. So mainly topo and channel sections, they're our main kind of work streams that we're working on. In 2013, we devised with Halcro at the time the EA channel section data format, because up until then we've been using ISIS data, which in essence it captured just the hard bed string or the soft bed string. So there was no data such as structure data for bridges, weirs. There's no water level data, no centerline data or defence data. The aim for this format is it captures all the data. There's a bit of a grab from it. It's just a simple text file that is application independent. We didn't want to tell contractors you must use this particular software. So it's a text file that basically captures all data into one text file. Because in the past, the modelers would sit there with the sort of just the channel shape on the screen, and then they would look at the Cadd drawing on the lap and extract the springing points of bridges, the soffits, parapets, road levels, and then put that into the modelling software. So there's a screenshot there of Flood Modeler Pro. It used to be called ISIS, but they've changed the name to Flood Modeler Pro.
Wonder why.
Also, that can include the vegetation types.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. That yeah. So that will the flood modelling software can then look at the roughness of the channel for the modelers as well. So yeah, there's been a bit of, when this first came out, the modelers were a bit unsure because they didn't have any data to play with. They said, they thought it was a great idea, and they didn't have the data because the surveyors hadn't produced it. So it was a bit of a to-ing and froing, and I appreciate the effort that applications in Cadd went into being able to produce this data format. And I can assure you, Mike, we are using it now, but it has been getting the data from the contractors and then feeding it into the models. It takes, you are talking years. Our programme as it is now is this year we're surveying what we're going to be modelling next financial year, because it's the way we're financed as well. We're sort of given a budget for each year, and we've had it in the past where we wanted to model a particular watercourse in one financial year, so we sent the surveyors out. Maybe the survey has been bigger than was expected, or the rivers were high, they couldn't get in the rivers, so it overran. The model didn't get finished, and then we have to give the money back. Whatever we haven't spent, we give back at the end of the financial year. So yeah, it's the data that we've been collecting over the past 6 years is now being used in models. So I can give you an example here. This is a 2D model. This is the River Loon in Lancaster. You can see the weir, which apparently it's Europe's biggest fish ladder. So you've got the tide. Bottom half is tidal, and the upper half is fluvial. So we'll just run the model. Also, in 2015, Storm Desmond, the flood that occurred took out an electrical substation, sort of just the north of this map. So there was, I think, something like 50,000 homes without electricity for about 4 days. So just run the model. How do we get the? There we go. It's starting to play now, I think.
Yeah.
There you go. So you can see the tide. There's a tidal cycle at the bottom, and the fluvial flood from above comes downstream. So this is using the channel data and also our LiDAR data for Lancaster.
So it's a simulation of what happened.
Yes, yeah, and we're working on phase 3 of defences for Lancaster, so this should be better protected by 2021. Also, the substation has been raised as well, so yeah, that's
without power and flooded.
Yeah. So as it stands now, the area around the substation will flood. The substation is more resilient, but you won't be able to get to it because of the ground. The roads will be flooded. And that's what you'll see on the internet when you look at our flood map. So you can see Skirton Weir is sort of in the middle of that screenshot. So then after the floods, we'll go out and survey where the water's got to, and it's just the maximum limit. So just looking for the debris really. Sometimes it's very, very clear, sometimes it's not so clear. What's wrong with surveying the top of a wall as a flood level? You're not entirely sure that was the maximum level there. And in fact, if you look, you can see a wet mark on the building behind. It looks like maybe the threshold of that house was reached. So yeah, it's just using your common sense when you're out and about. Sometimes it's very clear, like there's the tidal event there that I'm surveying there, and also the bridge that was overtopped. Bottom left, that's River Douglas. When there was the breach at near Croston Village, that was after Storm Desmond. So yeah, the flood extents, like the tidal survey we did there, that was to calibrate our coastal models. So we've got the tide readings, but there's also the simulations that we run includes the meteorological conditions at the time, so it will add on the surge as well. So that was just to verify the coastal predictions that we had at the time. There we go. So when you're delivering data to the EA, in the past there's been no kind of, we wanted particular files, particular formats, but there's been no structure. About 2 years ago we came to this, this file structure that makes it a lot easier for when people, makes it easier for the surveyors, because then wherever you are working in the country, this is the format that we expected in. We have had contractors in the past having ridiculously long folder names, so we'd have their name, we'd have the consultant's name, we'd have the job name, and then it'd have drawings at the end or whatever. And with our servers that we have, you end up running out of characters. You can't, the path names become too long. So there's the mandatory folders. So we've got the control, survey extents, and the report. And then depending on what job you've done for us, there'll be the channel folders. So if you've only surveyed one water course, then there'll only be one channel folder. And then the others, threshold surveys, topographic surveys, deformation surveys, they're all just depending on what the requirements of the survey scope are. The survey extent, we've never really asked for that before, and contractors are forgetting to deliver that with their work. The reason behind that is that we archive the data into a national archive. In the past, I would look after what we had in the northwest, and I had a GIS layer, so I knew what we had data for. We've now got a national system that goes on. We call it EasyMap 2, which is available to all EA staff, and on there we've got a layer which shows the various different types of surveys we've done, and also it's got our control benchmarks on there as well. So the extents, survey extents, having that delivered with the job helps us archive the data, because that's then used by our evidence and delivery team to archive the data. That's then stored on a server, soon to be going on the cloud, I think. It means that anybody within the EA can use that data. A bit like the LiDAR data, there's the potential for us to make our survey data open data for the public. There's just various things we need to look at in terms of privacy and copyright as well. So, for example, OS data, we can't really be giving that out to the public. And also maybe some of the photographs, even though it's just a photograph of the river, there could be members of the public in it, there could be a surveyor. If they're recognisable, then it's personal data, and we can't really be sharing that. Also, it's nice to get, we have job numbers, these J numbers for all our work, so that just helps us archive the data. So sometimes, depends how amenable the contractor is, but I say, can you just put this job number on the drawings, so it just makes it easy for us to archive the data for the future. So not an enforce talk, but it tells you how we use the data. Yeah, any questions?
The enforce cross-section, river cross-sections, are those exported to this EA Spec now, yeah?
Yes, yeah, that's written into our scope now. It used to be just the ISIS DAT files, but we ask for ISIS and EACSD.
Mike, there's a document that's available that tells you how to survey for it. You actually have to have that in mind, survey it with EACSD in mind, so that it's all there correctly.
Yeah, some good guidance on the AIC website, because yeah, you have to understand how Enforce works to be able to produce the outputs.
We've done a bit of work in the past via a consultant using the Pegasus mobile mapping to go into. Is that something that, because it's not written to survey standards, is that something that's being looked at, do you think, as a potential data source?
Possibly. Geomatics have got an old Lynx scanner, and we did look at perhaps getting threshold levels, property threshold levels from that data. So it's using the right tool for the right job, really. For flood modelling, we're more interested in the river. So it's being able to stitch any above surface scan data. So I'm waiting with intrepidation for the next presentation. But we would rather, for doing the river modelling, we'd rather use a pole to determine, the soft bed and the hard bed. And
I think the project we did was it was streets in a village that flooded regularly,
right.
and it was just getting sort of high resolution point cloud, covering all the streets and stuff. So
Right.
to go into it, but it was done. The consultant did the analysis. But
Yeah, and maybe we didn't have LiDAR at the time, because we have had various areas where we didn't have coverage, so we've either got the data using a drone or done a very coarse topo survey and stuff like that. But I could see for maybe some of the scheme designs, the mobile mapping being very useful.
yeah.
Yeah.